Well, hey, Cascade Church, welcome to another Wednesday's Word. This week, in my reading, I've been in the book of Exodus, and if you don't know, we're following along with the daily audio Bible, though a lot of people using this video or using their own plans, going through just the New Testament or just other Bible reading plans. Whatever's working for you, keep doing it. But one of the things I noticed today was they're beginning to introduce the sacrificial system. And as a 21st century Westerner, it seems very, very odd. I've never had a world, I never grew up on a farm, so the idea of bringing a sheep or a bull and sacrificing it seems completely alien to me. There are people in the church who have livestock, they've had to kill them, they keep the beef. Sometimes they name the cows, things like Phineas and Ferb, and then they eat the meat. Each of you to your own, but I've just never had to deal with that. Well, listening to other people talk about this, one of the things that we might not notice is early on the idea of sacrifice would be new to humanity. Imagine just a tribal humanity growing up trying to figure out its own values. And then somebody realizes that I'm going to save for the future. I'm going to sacrifice what I can eat today so that I can eat it in the future. Just that idea of saving is hard for a lot of people. For some of us, we're not good at that. We live paycheck to paycheck, month to month. But take that a further step. Then you suddenly realize that not only am I going to put off what I want to eat, I'm going to give the best of what I have and defer it for a higher good. So I'm going to give my first fruits, the best sheep, the first part of my land, to an invisible God who I may never meet in a personal way, like a face-to-face way like Moses did, trusting that this sacrifice will be worth it. Now suddenly, beyond all the religious things that we normally associate it with it, just think about how that's pulling us as a people to an understanding of life in a very different way. It's no longer what can I accomplish, no longer what can I do, not even how can I provide for my people and my tribe and my country. It's now, how do I win the influence, if you will? How do I gain influence and understanding and peace with something higher than me? And for non-Christians who think about these things are what we want. We want to be able to have peace and reconciliation and harmony with the world around us, with the environment, with other nations. And putting off immediate gratification to acquire those things or to begin building toward those things is hard for us as a country. Now you take that and you understand who God is. And that's why the whole Old Testament is filled with this floundering where people don't know how to approach God. Even though God clearly in the law lays out, these are the sacrifices, these are the feasts, it never feels like enough. So the people start going to other gods, they start adding other things. It goes all the way where it escalates, where they're sacrificing their firstborn, they're giving so much of their money, then they're not giving any, they just keep floundering back and forth. And so you get to the book of Micah where he says, what do I do? What does God require of me? Does he want the sacrifice of my firstborn, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? Can I give him 1,000 barrels of oil? What will finally be enough? And what God replies to Micah, and Micah records, is this is what I require. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly. And so all these invisible qualities, and I believe it's Malachi, not Micah, forgive me, but all those invisible qualities are building us into something that God wants us to be. And so these sacrifices are fostering on us not just a relationship with God, even though that's so important, but a relationship with God that isn't just an external religion. God wants more than just a pigeon or a goat or a bull or a lamb. God wants a heart that's formed after his. And the practice of sacrifice began to build that gap, both through the substitution of a lamb and that blood for the blood that I deserve to pay, but also the idea of putting off what I could immediately consume today, and also trusting that what God asked for me is enough. And so we apply that as a Christian. As a Christian, I don't have to bring a lamb. Jesus is the perfect lamb, but it doesn't always feel like enough. There's so many times where I've wallowed in regret, where I lay in bed thinking about sins I've done and wondering how God could love me. And it takes faith. It takes kind of an emotional sacrifice. It would be easier to say, you know what, God, if you're going to forgive me, then I'm going to do this giant thing. I'm going to go to Peru and convert every single person. I'm going to climb a mountain. There's an old Robert De Niro movie called The Mission, where he's a bloodthirsty conquistador in South America, and he becomes a follower of God, part of a Jesuit community. And he's so guilty for the sins that he's done that they take all of his armor and weapons, they tie him in a giant net behind him, and he's crawling up this mountain, pulling his own armor, in the case, pulling his own sins. And he just isn't strong enough. And then his friend cuts the burden loose. And that's such a beautiful picture of the gospel. Even though Jesus is enough, we still try to work for it. And it takes an act of faith and an act of sacrifice to say, I'm going to put aside my good deeds. I'm going to put aside all the striving I do. And I'm going to trust that you're enough. And so as you go through the Old Testament, sometimes these sacrifices and the laws and the dimensions of the tabernacle and all this stuff can get a little bit overwhelming. You begin to wonder, why does it matter? What matters is God showing us how to have rest for our soul. So as you read the Bible, feel free to forward me any questions you have. I would love to deal with those as we go through this. But that's all I've got for today. God bless.